Hello to all of you members of the audience, students, esteemed guest speakers and teachers who are present here. The topic for today's talk and my engagement with you that I've been given is prime time and impact. And when I talk about prime time and impact and then look at, in a nutshell, which is the theme of the talks in Hindu College, then it becomes prime time and impact and life in a nutshell. So let me begin with life in a nutshell. Many people today recognize me as this journalist who works in a top English channel. But do you know, some of us have very, very modest beginnings. So was mine, born in Kolkata, moved to erstwhile Bihar, father in a PSU, studied in a college, in a school first, and this was, many would say today, people sitting in the national capital would say, back of beyond, in a place called Sindri. And that was erstwhile Bihar, now part of Jharkhand. But we studied, and our education was well-rounded. When I completed my school, people in PSUs, many of you who have any idea would know, have transferable jobs. Moved to Pilani, studied in Rajasthan for a bit, then moved to Goa, used to be Bombay University, so studied in Goa, in the Bombay University for a bit, then moved to Pune, did my postgrad in economics and studied there for a bit. And like many households, where daughters are pursuing studies up to the level of masters and then the next step is MPhil or a PhD, and most parents advise you, why don't you go get a teaching job? It's predictable, it's well organized, and it's a good thing to do. But some of us have a different calling. I'm talking about life about 32, 33 years ago. And at that time, the options in front of me was a sitting offer from my own college, which wanted me to come and teach. And what my parents didn't know at that time was that I had gone and given the entrance test for a job in the Economic Times. And I wanted to write. And a third thing happened. I had an offer for working in a foreign bank. And when these three offers were sitting in front of me, I was told offer number one could be the bank, because foreign bank jobs at that time, in the late 80s and early 90s, were very, very popular jobs and very difficult to come by. So many expected that that was what I would take, and it was, of course, the salary offer was about 10 times more than the other two jobs. So many people thought it was a no-brainer. And then there was this call from the college itself that come and teach in your college. But you know, I chose to write because it was a dream that I wanted to follow. I didn't know where it would take me because not many women in journalism those days, especially in places that were not the national capital or capital of various states, you didn't have too much exposure to all this, but I knew I wanted to write. I picked up the Economic Times job, and then came the first impediment where my parents said that you can't work or live in a working women's hostel because it's not safe. Bombay in those days was pretty safe, but we had the hangover of Bihar and whatever, so there were all those questions. But I did work in Bombay, and I thought it was extremely empowering for a woman that time to be working in Bombay, because local trains were a great equal, they were safe, you could travel at night. So it was a great liberating feeling that you didn't need to be accompanied by somebody, you could actually go out to work on your own. And then one got married, moved to Delhi, had to change my place. And when I went to Delhi, I just drove around the place and I saw Parliament and I said, someday I'm going to go in there because this is an enigmatic building, and when you read newspapers, you hear so much about what's happening inside. And it was my dream as a young reporter that someday I'll come back and cover the Parliament. And soon enough, I had a baby. And then when women have babies, they have to choose, can they continue working? Can they balance work life and home life? And I chose to take a break because I thought my son needed me at that time. So I took a break. And then when I came back, I went looking for a job. You know what I was told? That women who work, get married, have a baby in a year or two, and then want to come back are not serious about their career. Those editors are still around. Today, I sometimes think back on that journey, and I was actually faced with shut doors in many places because they felt I was not serious about my career. But nevertheless, I just went on, and he kept trying. And then I got a job, and then in between, we had moved to Chandigarh. I got my job in Chandigarh, and then we had to come back to Delhi because my husband was being transferred. And it was embarrassing that after 6 months, I have to go back and say I'm quitting again because I have to move to Delhi. And then again, I was very apprehensive that the non-serious journalist tag would get attached to me, and this time for life. But I must say there are places and organizations that support you, and the Indian Express was one such organization which didn't let me resign, but they transferred me to Delhi because I had done in those 6 months some sterling work. I had gone out and reported that the chief minister of the state had virtually given to his family sugar mills on a platter without them having to pay 1 rupee to get the government-owned sugar mills, and they became private. That was a big story. Then I did paper mills in Punjab, which were just sending their waste water into the rivers of Punjab, and that was the water that was going into cultivation in the fields of Punjab, and what we were eating were plants grown in that contaminated water. After my story of coverage of, I think, 7 or 8 such paper mills, the entire pollution control board was sacked, and a new pollution control board and stringent norms were set up. So I've done a few stories in those 6 months, and that's when I begin to share with you impact. Impact can be made in a short period of time with a little body of work, provided you have two basic features that you follow. One is perseverance. You have to keep going at it. Success never comes in the first or the second or the third go. Maybe sometimes you have to follow and chase success, and maybe you get it in the 20th or the 30th or the 50th or the 150th time. But perseverance must be there. And the second is commitment and sincerity. You have to be committed. If you're not going to be able to prove your point. There is no short run, there is no shortcut. Some people may hit the jackpot, but that's them. Most people don't. And law of averages apply. All of us have to work hard in the long term to be able to make a mark. And that has been the only mantra that I've followed. And from there, to come back to Delhi, to be given the beat of telecom on the day, I don't know how many of you are aware, the Telecom Scan, the first Telecom Scan was unveiled in 1995, when the first time private telecom licenses were given out. I was given the beat on that day. I didn't know where to go and what to do. I didn't even know all the routes in Delhi. But I was told, and my goal that was set for me was that I have to come back with a front page story by evening. And there I brought out the story that defined that scam. The lady behind the minister, Runu Ghosh, and that story was broken by me. And then there was a spate of stories. 26 judges of the Supreme Court being given free mobile phones and free usage because MTNL had set up an antenna on the roof of Supreme Court. And I did that story because I felt there are cases of MTNL going, how can judges take free phones, because they were private companies too. And I had got documents from MTNL where they had internally said that since our cases are going on, it would be a nice gesture to give these phones to the judges, honorable judges. That story landed on Fali Nariman's table and stood there for 3 weeks because everybody was scared that if you take on the entire Supreme Court judges, you might have to wrap up business and close shop. But when we had proof and evidence, that story went as a 8-column lead on the first page of Indian Express. And the headline in a nutshell was just, "Hello, your lordships." And the morning that story came out, the Supreme Court judges returned all their phones. Now that's called impact. And I carried on. There was the telecom scam, there was the 2G scam, and then I moved to television. I knew nothing about television. I was 38 years old. Many people told me that at 38, most people leave television to go back to print because you're getting old. And only women in India get old. Men don't. So I was told this several times that you're old, you're not going to make the cut, so why are you making this colossal mistake of moving to television? And my only reasoning was that there is a new medium for journalists that has come up in our lifetime. Why not experiment with it? Why not find another way to tell the stories that people of the country need to know? And I was told I'm a print journalist. I do evidence and document and file-based stories. I will never be a success in television. And here I am, ladies and gentlemen, 18 years later, still doing the same thing. And possibly nobody from nowhere, from back of beyond, at the wrong age, making an entry into television. And here I am, 18 years later, hopefully defining what television journalism is all about, leading a team of people in my newsroom who've never seen a woman as a boss. There are many women in news centers, but very few at the top. So here I am, leading them, carrying with them the baton of journalism. We get trolled all the time. And as women, I get commented on what sari I'm wearing, how fat I'm looking, how badly I speak, how old I am, what my form is. But very little is said about the work that I do. Because the work that I do, CWG scam, walking the streets of London, bringing out that story. What happened after that, you know. And that's called impact. 2G, Suresh Kalmani went to jail, by the way, after my story. 2G Spectre scam. You know what happened after that? All the guys, all the ministers of that time went to jail after my story. Antariksh Deva's scam, still in international arbitration, because India challenged the scam that took place at that time at the ISRO. My story. Sonia Gandhi's Office of Profit. What happened after that? I broke that story. In 7 hours of breaking that story, Sonia Gandhi resigned, had to stand for elections again. That's called impact. Innumerable stories, but one theme that goes behind it, and that is perseverance, sticking to the facts, finding the evidence, and working hard. Because if you don't have the evidence, you can't shoot and scoot. It happens in today's politics. But that's not what we were raised on, and that's not what I would like to propagate. So, I don't know. Gandhiji said, impact can be gentle. That's why Quit India, Ahimsa, everything happened without violence. And there's one country in the world that got its independence non-violently, and that is the country called India, our Bharat. We defined what impact is, and impact can be done silently and gently. I must say, I tried to do that. When I stepped into the shoes of my predecessor for the 9 o'clock news hour, everybody in the audience, everybody in the political spectrum was used to a screaming and shouting match, because if you had to say it, you only had to scream it. I changed that paradigm. Allowing people to speak and still carrying a show on your shoulders is possible. That's called impact. I have the highest rated primetime show without screaming, without being abusive, without actually talking on top of everybody, and without talking all the time. That can also be called impact. And that is the primetime impact that I bring to you, ladies and gentlemen. Be there. It doesn't matter if you're from a small town. Be there. Keep following your dream. It doesn't matter if you came from a smaller school. It doesn't matter if you haven't studied abroad. I didn't. My parents didn't allow me to go, because when I got scholarship, I was told, oh, let's just study here and then get married. I didn't allow that to stop me. I made the best of what I had. I took care of my two boys. I hope and pray they also think one of them is, the alma mater is Hindu college, and he's here somewhere in the audience. I hope I've always been present when they needed me, whether it was unit tests, whether it was half yearlies, whether it was board exams. So much so that even when he got into college, he had to tell me, Mom, stay away, no more unit tests, don't follow me to college. And I've done that. I've had to hold back my ambition. I've done that when I did need to. And now I still have made it in time. Many people say it's too late. It's never too late. You can do it anytime. The time should be of your choosing. And if you don't get it, no problem. You just have to be effective, because that's called impact. This is the prime time of my life, and I hope I leave an impact. Thank you very, very much for having me on this talk. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.